Hi, good evening. I'm Erica Brown. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. I'm one of Kingston Reads 3 moderators for 2021, and I want to welcome you to our first conversation of the new year. Tonight, we will be talking with our special guests, Dara Lurie and Marcia Seabro, and we will be talking with all of you about race, healthcare, and healing. Before we get going, I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Because Zoom, we're almost a year into dealing with the technology of the pandemic. And our Zoom discussion will be recorded this evening, and we'll be streaming this discussion to our YouTube channel, and the video will be saved and posted on YouTube so that folks who couldn't be here tonight are able to watch it. If you choose and you don't want your voice, your name, or your image to be a part of the recording, we welcome you as a listener. Only the speakers' names, voices, and/or images will appear on the recording.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me very well. My name is Shaniqua Bowden. Thank you, Erica. I am also one of Kingston Reads 3 moderators, and I want to encourage all of you very strongly to participate in this conversation as much as you possibly can, because in the end, that's what really makes community, right? Yeah. So we'll have the chat feature open, and you guys, we invite you to raise your digital hand if you'd like and give your responses and join the conversation. And maybe you have questions of your own, and you're certainly welcome to raise those questions in the end.
Great, and I am Charlotte Adamis. I'm the third moderator for Kingston Reads, and this is a completely volunteer effort. It's great to see that a lot of you are back, and we welcome our new participants. We've switched things up a little bit from last time. Our intention going forward is to have a community conversation on the third Thursday of each month, starting tonight. And many of our conversations will be thematic, like the one this evening. So while we strongly encourage you to check out the books and the other resources that will support these conversations, we want to make sure that this hour is more about conversation, one that we hope will ignite your interest and commitment to dig even deeper.
Always trying to find the unmute button. So you can choose to watch this conversation in gallery or speaker view. And because your mics are muted when you wish to participate, please use the hand raise icon to get our attention and leave it up, and we'll make sure that we take it down. We just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to be heard. The location of the icon is located at the bottom of your screen. There is an option for reactions, and that is where it lives. So you should be able to choose to raise your hand or lower it. And if any of you have any challenges finding that hand icon, just let us know in the chat box, and we'd be happy to help, or you're most welcome to use the chat as well if you'd like to speak. You can enter your comments in that chat box as well. We always have some, I don't want to say always, we tend to have some really wonderful kind of side conversations happening in that chat box.
I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce our guests for the evening. That is Marcia Seabro and Dara Lurie. They are both engaged in healthcare and healing in our community, and we are so honored to have their voices here in the room tonight. Marcia, you welcome to speak.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here this evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Marcia Seabro. I'm the nutrition educator with the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County. I facilitate nutrition education classes to families and students through our expanded food and nutrition education program. It's known as FNEP. It's been around for more than 50 years, and it delivers evidence-based curriculum to families and youth. It's based out of recommendations for the United States Department of Agriculture. And normally our Cornell Cooperative Extension provides very hands-on learning experience but with the pandemic, our lessons are being delivered virtually. So my focus is to help families plan and prepare healthy meals on a limited budget. We also talk about options for foods that are lower in sodium, fats, salts, and sugar. And we make a big emphasis on the importance of physical activity. Our youth and school-based programs are 6 and 8 weeks. Graduates get a certificate of completion and other incentive tools. And other kitchen tools as incentives. All of our programs with FNEP are free, but adults must have children in the household under the age of 19 and who are eligible for either SNAP, WIC, free or reduced school lunch. So I just want to share what I love about my work is talking to families about promoting healthy behaviors and raising awareness about food choices and access to healthy foods. Food is a necessity, food is cultural, food is tradition, food is comfort, and our experience with food is often intergenerational. Unfortunately, issues with diabetes, hypertension, and other chronic diseases are also intergenerational. So by gaining awareness about how we consume food is a good start in making small steps towards better health. Thank you, Shaniqua.
Welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you. And Dara, I think your voice is on somewhere. Dara, can you hear me?
I think she's still having some tech issues tonight, Shaniqua. So I think what we'll do is we'll circle back. What do you think?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. And we actually, Carol wanted to know from Marcia, do you ever need volunteers? How cool.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So the Cornell Cooperative here in Ulster has volunteers in many of its programs. Right now, unfortunately, our FNET program is not taking like volunteers because we're only delivering virtual lessons, but our hope is when we go back to in-person, because in person we do food demonstrations. So please do check back with us when some of these restrictions are lifted on in-person learning.
Cool, great, wonderful, thanks.
Thank you,
Marsha. Yeah, thank you, Carol. So I wanted to take, we'll come back to Dara, and I'm sorry she's having these so common, right? But I want to thank Marcia, thank Dara for being with us tonight. We also want to thank Amanda and Anthony Stromowski, the co-owners of Kingston's bookstore, Rough Draft Bar and Books, for continuing to support and promote Kingston Reads, and Jimmy Buff of Radio Kingston for his support. And a shout out to Karen Levine, our tech consultant and Zoom host. And now on to you, Erica.
I actually want to say, I see that Dara had made it back. And so I would like to, I'm just like checking the participants, checking. And so I wonder if Dara, if maybe your tech is working a little bit better.
I think so.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I just gave up on one computer and switched to another. So I'm just rearranging, but I'm here. Sorry for all the static at my end of this connection. All right, let's see. So perhaps you could just orient me a little bit.
Sure. We went over a little bit of housekeeping today and introduced ourselves and said a little bit about Kingston Reads. And Marcia actually just had just completed a few minutes of introducing herself to the folks of the group. So we invite you to do the same.
Okay, I will try. And I actually was able to hear a little bit from Marcia, so that was good. I was in an in-between space of on and not. So hello, everyone, and I'm happy to be here finally. I'm Dara Lurie. I'm still rearranging my laptop. Yeah, so I am a writer and I'm a workshop facilitator with TMI Project, and I may know some folks here from that. But I am invited to join tonight's discussion because back in the spring of past year, I co-founded an initiative, which does not mean I knew what I was doing when I started, and I'm still in a learning curve. But we've come to the name of the People's Wellness Initiative because what we're about is growing a net of
Is that just myself that's noticing that Dara?
No, I think Dara, you froze.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
this
okay.
awareness. It's really, I think the reason I jumped in with pretty much no knowledge of how health connection works is just my, I guess, felt sense from a lifetime of the incredible imbalance of wellness in Black and Brown communities with, you know, what's available within white communities. So that's what brings me to this place and to this work. And it's been really interesting because I'm learning from the herbalists that I'm speaking with and planning with, trying to get out of an old paradigm, an old way of thinking about what wellness even is, and figure out how we can create working systems to deliver that.
Beautiful, thank you. So Charlotte had also sent extended a thanks to Amanda and Anthony Stromowski. So it's important for us to set the tone for this conversation, which is why we had you all sign our community agreements when you had registered. So right now I'm actually going to read them, and I'm also going to place them in the chat just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So 1 is lead with a loving heart. 2 is lean in, lean out. If you are someone who is quiet, put your hand up. Feel free to step up. And if you are a person who tends to dominate a conversation, hold on to that digital hand, and maybe I welcome you to do a little bit more listening and maybe just step back a bit. And there's 3 is ouch, oops. So if somebody says something that offends you, speak up with an ouch. And for the person who said something offensive, no matter if, you know, if it is intentional or not, take ownership, responsibility, and apologize from the heart. That's the oops, because this is a Zoom discussion. One of the moderators may jump in on these ouch, oops situations. Land the plane. Be conscious of not dominating the conversation when it's your turn to speak because others are waiting. 5, stories stay, lessons leave. People may share stories tonight, and it's not okay without permission to share those stories outside of the space. However, you take away a lesson that is learned.
Thank you. So I want to just start with a body practice. One of the books tonight, Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, which if you haven't read it, the book, as you can see, it's very well read in my house. I tend to mark things up, but this book is filled with body practices to help us all begin to heal from what he calls embodied racial trauma. That trauma is very different inside white bodies, inside bodies of color, and he also differentiates bodies belonging to police officers. So I invite you to explore Resmaa's book if you haven't already. So let's just begin in whatever seat we are at and sitting quietly for a minute or two and just breathe normally. And notice your breath as it enters your nose and your lungs. And for the next couple of seconds, just follow it as it moves in and out of your body. And then bring your attention to the bottom of your feet and sense the ground beneath them, supporting you. And stay focused here for a few breaths. And now move your attention to your back and to the sensation of it pressing lightly against the chair or the couch. And just feel how you're being supported. And now think of a person or a pet or a place that makes you feel safe and secure. And imagine you're with that person or pet or in that safe place. And let yourself experience that safety for just a few seconds. Check in with your body, starting with your shoulders. Notice how they feel. And check in with your jaw, your neck. Are they relaxed or constricted? And now imagine that that comforting person or place is gone. And instead, there's an angry stranger standing in front of you. And that stranger's arms are crossed and he or she is glaring at you silently. And you look into that stranger's eyes and hoping his or her expression will soften, but it remains unchanged. Check in with your body again. How do your shoulders feel? Your neck, your jaw, your back. And then gently, one by one, feel into all the places where you sense that constriction. And let your attention rest briefly on each one. Now send that angry stranger away and bring back the comforting person, place, or pet. And for several breaths, let's relax in the safety that this presence provides. And now gently move your attention through your body, from your head down to your toes one more time. And feel into each spot where you sense softness. And stay with each of these another second or two. Thank you. So I'm going to hand this over to Shaniqua. Have we lost Shaniqua? All right, we're going to move on to a quick Zoom poll to see where we're at.
She's back. Shaniqua's up there.
Hey, Shaniqua. She went down deep into the zone wherever she went. All right, Shaniqua, you're on.
It's technical.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think I'm in as a participant now, and I couldn't unmute my own self. So.
Oh no. All right.
Yes, to continue on, we'd like to start and get a sense of where we all are on the topic, on tonight's topic. So there will be a Zoom poll. If you could all please participate, no judgment. We're going to work through this together. So you see the question here, which is where are we on tonight's topic? Number one, I know very little about race. Number two, I know something about it, race and healthcare and healing. And number 3, I know a good deal about race, healthcare, and healing.
I love seeing the way these line up, right? It's instant gratification. Cool. Huh. All right, poll is closed.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like the majority, by far, people know something about race, healthcare, and healing. That's a good place to start, right? So we're looking, as you know, at the topic through the lens of race, right? Race and racism as we examine, I'm just going to move that poll, as we examine health and healthcare. And we would like to bring you in, whether it's to comment on any of the books, My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem, Killing the Black Body by Dorothy Roberts, Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl, or any of the articles or podcasts that we've posted on our own site, or things that you've read. But I thought we should start with maybe the biggest healthcare crisis in our lifetime, and that is one that postdated the publication of these 3 books, which is the pandemic. And I think, as all of us know, the pandemic has only served to magnify the existing disparities in health outcomes for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so while we don't have any local stats on the racial disparities wrought by the pandemic on our community, because Ulster County was unable to provide the data broken down by race, we do have some New York State and national data that I wanted to take a look at now, just in case you haven't seen this. So nationwide, Black people have died at 1.5 times the rate of white people, and we have lost at least 58,704 Black lives to COVID-19. Black people account for 16% of COVID-19 deaths where race is known. So this is according to covidtracking.com. For Ulster County, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Dara.
Yeah, I just want to mention that there's a site. I'll look and see if I can get the link. It's APM. They're tracking death by race across Black, Latinx, or Latino, as they I think have it, Pacific Islander, every category. And their numbers are really, I'm not a percentage person, but I watch these statistics from one month to the next, just jump. Yeah. And this is back in October.
Yeah.
So when I first looked at it, the first line is, see, as the numbers get smaller, it's actually worse. Because yeah, I'm really bad with numbers, but I could tell that it was just accelerating. And so for now, it could be, worse than this. It was just really, it cut through the, I'm not good with percentages, but I can look at this and say, yeah. Actually, I'm sorry, these numbers are, there's something wrong with this first number, because the point is it's the highest number. The first number is the highest number. So it's not 1 in 920 Black Americans. It's higher than the Indigenous, and it goes down.
No, that makes sense though, Derek. So 1 in 920 is actually the highest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at it thinking, oh, wait, this isn't quite right, but thank you. So hopefully nobody else has this brain glitch that I had, but it's just remarkable how quickly it really accelerated. I think when I saw that, that's when it got real to me.
So this is right, and this is interesting, and maybe somebody has this offhand. So Dan asked, what is the proportion of Black people to the overall population? And Winston answers 13%.
Yes.
13%. So it is disproportionate to the percentage of population. That's the disparity. So you can't do numbers to numbers. You have to look at percentage of population. Is that correct? Somebody who's better with math than I am, but that's my understanding. You're welcome, Dan. Yeah. So I think, what do we think? And then locally, again, it was really hard to get numbers for whatever reason. Our county isn't tracking in the same way that nationally is. And in fact, New York State's not doing a great job either, which is something I found out in my research. But what do we think are the underlying causes of these healthcare disparities? Thinking about what you may have read in these books or witnessed in your own lives. What are we seeing in the world? What are we reading? What are we thinking? What assumptions do we have? And anybody's welcome to jump in, our moderators, our guests, our participants. What are our thoughts on this? No thoughts, nothing. Why are these disparities occurring? Is anybody? Okay. So, right, Leslie, there are some articles that contain graphs on their percentages, right, in the suggested articles. But why are these disparities occurring, and why do they reflect health outcomes prior to the pandemic?
I want to apologize. I'm not necessarily sure the order of the hand raising, but Darcy.
Oh, you're looking at the hands. Oh,
I am.
Great.
Darcy and Rhea. Is it Rhea? I'm just going to actually start with Rhea first. If you would like. Yeah, perfect.
Yes, it is Rhea. One of the reasons for the disparity is that people are more on the front lines. That is, they are more likely to have jobs that are essential. So they are continuing to take money in grocery stores and other jobs that expose them to the public, and more likely to have jobs that don't pay them when they aren't there. So they are loath to take time off, and that can jeopardize anybody's health.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Darcy, want to take down your hand?
Oh, yeah, hi. I read a little bit about this. I don't know. I think there probably are a lot of reasons. It might be kind of complex, but I heard this term, I read this term somewhere in the recent months, healthcare deserts. So we know about food deserts where there might be not accessibility in neighborhoods that are predominantly people of color live in, but that there just might not be as good a connection to healthcare or, as much availability. I'm not 100% sure how much that really is part of it, but I did read something about that and it sort of made sense. And also something I read about in New York City, there seems to be a lot of the transit workers, the guys and gals that drive buses and trains, things like that. A lot of people of color are in those jobs, same as what the first person who spoke said.
Thank you. Thank you. We have some things in the chat. Dara, you have a link in there. Is that a link to more info? Is there anything you want to share, or just you wanted to share that link with us?
I updated the link, the APM Research Lab.
Cool.
And so it's as of December 2020.
Great, thank you.
And I just wanted to add to Donna's comment. I was saying yes to this, that people of color are not necessarily believed when they speak on their concerns. And I think most of you have heard about what happened with Dr. Susan Moore. I think I have her name right, Susan, but it might be a different first name. This is a doctor who became sick with COVID and was speaking to her treating physician saying, this is what I need, this is what I need. And she was denied a full course of treatment, was sent home, and 2 weeks later died. She's a doctor. And her treating physician did not accept her own knowledge of her body as well as her credentials as a doctor.
So these are frightening and unfortunately really old stories in the American healthcare system and the story of race, right? Not being believed, not acknowledging pain, not acknowledging an understanding of bodies and what's happening. And Donna mentions the infant mortality rate. There was an article in the Washington Post just 2 weeks ago about the high rate of death amongst children born to Black mothers when they're attended by white doctors. That was pretty horrifying. And yet, when a woman of color has a doctor of color, that cuts the mortality rate in half. And what does that say about the system of white supremacy and healthcare, right? What a frightening article that was.
I would like to call attention to Ben. Ben has had his hand up, and then Stephanie will have your question next.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for allowing me to be here. One of the things that I was thinking that's part of leading to this is part of what was discussed in Resma's book about how trauma is experienced in the body and passed down through the generations. And so you have that experience where I think that health conditions have compromised people's health through generational trauma, and then that has now put them at higher risk with a situation of COVID. So pre-existing conditions, I think, really plays a part in that situation as to why more people are affected by this outbreak, as well as the underlying thing that they don't have a whole lot of resources the way our society is set up, and so they're forced to continue to work and again be on the front line. So
thank you. Thanks, Ben. Stephanie, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing this. I'm just seeing the chat, and someone mentioned memories of Tuskegee. I think lack of trust in I'll just go ahead and call it the medical industrial complex. Just after the history of mistreatment and non-treatment of Black people in particular, but people of color.
Thank you. Thank you. So when we're looking at the system that we have now in place, right, our healthcare system, I think a question comes up, which is can any human being be undeserving of healthcare, right? Isn't that sort of what our healthcare system says when we look at the disparities, when we look at inequitable treatment? What does that say about our healthcare system, right, that we've developed? Who is it serving? Who is it serving? Is anybody being served well by it?
I just wanted to add in about the, the reversal of the universal healthcare that we were all able to tap into at some point. And with that, the Healthcare Act, so with that being taken away or reversed, that puts certain people in an advantage to receive healthcare and others at a disadvantage.
I think too, one of the things that Jonathan Metzl writes, who wrote the book Dying of Whiteness, is that the healthcare system that, people, at least in the former, I don't want to say his name, but the former administrator, former president, that people were denying themselves health care because they didn't want their tax dollars, right, to go to pay for other humans, right? What a concept, right? And there was a guy mentioned in the book from Tennessee who was literally dying of liver failure. And he didn't want his tax dollars going to, and this is a direct quote, to Mexicans and welfare queens. He'd rather die. And he did. And he did. So, wow, this is what we're fighting against, right? When we're looking at things like a truly universal healthcare system. How do we combat that? How do we approach that mentality? And maybe we go back to RESMA, right? And that until we start working on what's going on in here, we can't get to here, right? That somehow the body has got to be healed before the head. Is that even real? Is that realistic?
Well, I'd like to try and articulate a point of view that I'm learning from the herbalists that I have the real pleasure and honor to be in conversation with. And one sentence or one idea for me really encapsulates a difference in paradigm. I was speaking with an herbalist who's part of a collective. They're an anarchist collective, which means they are non-hierarchical. And they bring medicine to the people on the front lines, whether they're showing up for demonstrations or they're at home. And their ultimate goal is to create free or very low cost medicine. And in this conversation, this particular herbalist said to me, medicine is not a machine, or it is not a thing, it's a relationship. Mm. And this is really, I'm oversimplifying, but it should be simple in a sense, that what she's pointing at is that our ideas of what medicine should be have to do with getting things, whether they're prescriptions or MRIs or all of these, technical things that we've developed, which can be very, very useful. But at the fundamental basis for healing is in relationship. Mm. And when you think about, just that example you bring from this man who's willing to see himself die rather than get these, quote, welfare queens, and forget the other category. You see the sickness in the relationship itself. This is somebody who has been so poisoned by a toxic white supremacist view of our country, who has been so deeply poisoned by it that he's unable to see what medicine is meant to be. He's unable to bring it to himself, and because he doesn't want anyone else. And yeah, it's a thread that if you follow it back, you see it's really the whole fabric of our the way our culture has been constructed to create such hostility. And yeah. There's no healing in that. Even if you have access to an MRI machine, you're not going to heal yourself.
Yeah, and there's the difference, right, Dara, between healthcare and healing. And like Ben said, it's generational, right? It's generations of trauma. I think Sterling, you had your hand up, or would you like to speak? Or your hand went down? Okay. We lost you, Sterling. Such a great point. And I think, what is the difference between healthcare and healing in this country? Do we really have those concepts separated? And what is the difference to people? Oh, and we do have a hand up. Maritza.
Hi, thank you for having this forum. It's my first time participating. I was trying to answer your earlier question, like what do we do, kind of like to address this, and attitudes like the one that Dara just repeated about the man willing to die rather than help Mexicans or welfare queens, which, as she aptly said, are very toxic messages that have been, welfare queens is from Reagan's era, putting that out there. Mexicans was some of his last administrators, but not only them, it's very racist ideas that get thrown and circulated very strategically. And because of that, we need a multitude of strategies too, right? We need to have conversations like this. This is really great. I'm sorry, can you all hear me okay? Because they're having dinner. My family's having dinner next door.
Good. What's for dinner, Maritza? Because we'd like to join you.
Yeah. Well, I think they're having mac and cheese. But yeah, so I think conversations like these are really important, and I'm about dialogue and about doing this, and I was very appreciative of you including the book of Resma Menakem, because I definitely found a lot of healing messages throughout that. And I'm not sure if it was in that book or if it was in a different interview, but one other thing that he mentions is important to do is to have like caucuses, right? And so white folks get together and talk amongst yourselves, and brown folk and black folk, and everyone sort of have these conversations too, or first, I think, is what he encourages, because there's so much to get out, right? Just about our own upbringing, our own family relationship with health, and what we think is proper care. Maybe even women and men having their own caucuses to sort of talk that out. Women have for centuries, right, have been discounted and not properly cared for. And I'm thinking about Adrienne Rich. I'm like blanking on her name, and her book of Women Born, and that wonderful history of women, and just how, it's been a long time coming that we have. I mean, it was out, so I better land the plane because I've been going on for a while. We need to have more dialogue and very strategic ways of breaking off and then coming together like this again too. But I think having our own, and each group is going to find so much within their specific populations that informs, those really deep-seated beliefs that people have and hold on to.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Making change. Positive.
Thanks, Maritza. Thanks. And I think Sterling is back. Yay, Sterling. Thanks, Maritza.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So first off, I want to say thanks for this dialogue, and I agree with Maritza that these dialogues are so important. I wanted to note that meditation you read was from my grandmother's hands. And it was a perfect example of the work that that this author is doing. And just a plug for the book. I've done so much trying to learn about race as a white person, as a trans person, as a masculine person. I do everything. I watch the movies, listen to the radio shows, read the articles, talk to people. It was such a revelation, the idea that it's not going to work if it's just in my head. And so that idea of, those meditations like the one you read is an example where does racism live in my body? And it's not thinking about, am I a racist? Like, white people where, we have privilege, but like to really get into our bodies, Black people, people of color, experience it in a different way. So how do we begin to heal that? So just a really, strong plug for that book in a really radical way. And also Me and White Supremacy, if you are white, is an incredible workbook that I've found really helpful. So thanks.
Right here. Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you. And that is always the question, right? Do we do this work separately? Do we come together? And I think there's a need for both, right? There's a need to, especially like when we're building community, right? But I agree, do our own work and then do the work to bring community together. And it can be challenging. One of the things that Rasmus says in the book is that he doesn't believe that we're ready to come together for, I've seen him say 7 to 10, I read, 7 to 10 years, 3 to 4 years. And for those of us who feel a sense of urgency, which can be a very white thing, that is hard, right? To wait 7 to 10 years. So maybe the work has to happen somewhat simultaneously. I'm not sure. We may make some mistakes along the way. Somebody just said, what book did you just hold up? Oh, that was Rhea. That was the book that Sterling mentioned, Me and White Supremacy.
I think Marcia has something she wants to add.
Yeah, go for it, Marcia.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. So I just wanted to continue the idea like that Maritza talked about in our relationship with health. And when COVID first came out, and there were messages in the media about Black and Brown people and immigrants in the inner city, the urban people getting COVID, and that this is something that could not happen in rural white America, right? That it was a sickness of people of color and of immigrants. Those types of stereotypes, it makes me think about how we interpret messages that we are sick, that we are people of need, that we have these chronic problems. And how does that belief, like demoralize us taking action and having that a legitimate right to seek better health care. And in addition to that, I just wanted to mention about, thinking about health being like generational. So I'm originally from the Caribbean. My dad is the first of 12. He grew up on a farm, not a big fan of like modern like medicine or going to the doctor. And so in my family, we grew up with this belief that life is hard, and you have to work hard, and you have to work through your pain, right? And that there is a tradition in honor, in that there being some suffering in order for you to just like maintain things the way that they are. So I think that in addition to looking at like the disparaging access to healthcare, that we also have to look at what our own, what our beliefs are about our entitlement to care and self-care, and to not ignore how we feel until it's too late. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. Yeah. And
can I chime in for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, just chiming in, Marcia, what you say about the entitlement to self-care, and what came to mind immediately was this stereotype of the strong Black woman, and how, while I do agree that Black women are profoundly strong, I also think it's a stereotype it's a double-edged sword. Because when I think of my own family story, my grandparents both came from the Caribbean, and my grandmother had 7 children, and each one of them did not. None of my aunts or uncles, my mother, lived as long as their mother. And that's not really how it's supposed to be. We talk about the kind of advances of medicine and everything, that we are prolonging life expectancy. And I always ask myself whether the shorter life spans of my mother, aunts, and uncles had something to do with the hypertension associated with being a Black person in this country, because there were aneurysms, there were heart attacks, there were, all sorts of things that ended life too soon for most of the children of my grandmother, who lived to be 86. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, this idea of the strong Black woman, the strong Black man.
Thank you. Barbara Sarah.
Oh, if I just want to make sure that I respect, I saw that Rhea had her hand up.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure if she still has the question, but in the chat I said we're absolutely going to get to your question. So Rhea, if you're still with us and you still have a question, please feel free to join us in conversation.
Thank you. I wanted to make the point that I think Marcia did make, that we've got again the double-edged sword of that Dara was just talking about, of, on the one hand, people who identify themselves as sick and therefore no good, and on the other hand, people who deny that they're sick or in need, maybe I should say in need of care, let's put it that way, and don't care for themselves or let anybody else do it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And Barbara?
Yeah, Dara raised something that's of particular interest to me. I'm affiliated with an organization in Kingston called Circle of Friends for the Dying. And I'm wondering if any of the books that you referred to actually have information and statistics about differences in treatment of Black and white people at end of life. What kind of care do they get? What about, I'm also very interested in helping people do their advanced care planning. Is that happening in our community in some way, in the Black community, in the white community? Because that's a particular interest that I have. Does anyone know about that? Is it in any of those books?
So as far as the books, Barbara, no. I mean, Resma's book is very much focused on body, on paying attention to racialized trauma in the body, not dealing with end of life. Dying of whiteness is more an examination of, white people who are denying, who are allowing white supremacy basically to kill themselves through opposition to healthcare, gun ownership, and opposition to public education. And killing the Black body is very much about women's, Black women and reproductive health care and all of the history. So I think for those who want to know more about the history of how did we get to this double-edged sword of how Black women have been treated and how their bodies have been considered, that's the focus of that book. So not specifically.
End of life. No
end of life
about that.
No, very much at the other end of life. In fact, for at least Dorothy's book. Yeah.
Thank you. It's an area where I'm going to do some research.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I think we are going to, unless we are, take a quick look at the comments and we're going to wrap it up. I know we started a little late, so I'm let us go a couple of minutes beyond 6 o'clock, but we like to be respectful of your time. Maritza had mentioned another book, Of Woman Born by Adrienne Rich. Let's see if I'm missing anything else here. Yep, Ben Brown, separate groups for safety. Yeah, and this was definitely, Ben, a question that came up for me, hopefully this didn't feel unsafe tonight, but again, I'm speaking from the body of a white woman, so I can't read. And this is something that the moderators and I will talk about after. And please feel free to contact us if anybody felt that this was not comfortable. We dove in tonight, and I'd like to think that's a good way to start. But if it isn't working for members of our community, really important to speak up. Let us know. We'll put up our contact information in just a moment. Be honest, I'm more than willing to take responsibility for mistakes. And there's nothing worse than adding more pain.
We can always grow. There's a group, very preliminary, we're very brand new, came out of the pandemic. I'm in a group called the Black Liberation of Kingston. It's Black Indigenous people of color, and we come together, and I have to say, I feel safer. I feel like I can be my most authentic self, and that doesn't mean that I feel any, necessarily negative in a group such as this one, but I have to say that it is very comforting to be in conversation with folks who have really deeply similar experiences to myself. So I would just want to uplift that I know that that actually came up a few times. I think Marcia had brought that up. I think Maritza had brought that up, and then I hear that Ben had brought that up as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Dan brought something up, which is that he'd like to see a few questions to think about ahead of time. And we for the first time tried not to do that. And again, we're open. We're seeing how that works. We wanted it to be a little more free flowing tonight. Please let us know if that didn't work for you, and maybe we should publish a few questions, but we wanted to make it less book club like. We didn't want you studying for this. We wanted to see what came up, but let us know. And Winston mentioned a book that I haven't heard of. This looks great, Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. So that's in the chat. So
that is a very good book. Charlotte, can I add something for Barbara? I didn't get to dive into Killing the Black Body, like the book itself, but on the kingstonreads.org website, where you have these additional links and podcasts posted, I did get to watch the TED Talk with Dorothy Roberts. And she talks a lot about like the specific, she touches on the specific numbers that that a Black person may have and a white person may have, like let's say in a like in a medical test, in a lab test, and how like a Black person would be deemed to have this thing, whereas in a white person may not, or vice versa. Like it would say like we both have 83, our numbers are 83 in blood sugar, and you're a diabetic and I'm not, because you're white and I'm not, or something like that. So I would encourage you that in your research to maybe watch that TED Talk, and it may lead you to more statistics and specifics on that. And she's not the first person that I've heard say that, of how in the medical field, what is it? Tests are
biased.
Yeah, read differently for, yes. Mm-hmm.
Can I offer an example of that bias you're talking about, Shaniqua? I just learned this last week or 2 weeks ago. The oximeter, which is the little device to measure our blood saturation, oxygen saturation for the blood, becomes really important around COVID because it can determine whether you need emergency care. Turns out it doesn't read brown skin. It has been given, they found this out some years ago, and somebody felt like it wasn't important to follow up on, but somebody brought it out again. What happens is, because it works by shooting light through the skin, it was never set to acknowledge melanin. you know, levels of melanin beyond a certain point. So it's been giving back incorrect readings, which can lead people to think that someone has a high enough oxygenation and be sent home, when in fact they're in a danger zone. So, and there you think, oh, it's a device. Yeah, it's a device, but it's absorbed the same bias that's shaping so many aspects.
That's a good one. It's an awful example. Oh, great. Tracy, thank you for an article on this, the oximeter. Yeah. And I know that Darcy had asked for the Washington Post article, and I can send that, we can post that on the website, because I didn't want to fool around and grab that while I was trying to pay attention here, but I can share the Washington Post article on the infant mortality rate.
You can do
I
that.
did put it into the chat.
Yeah, Karen.
It's in the, oh, thank you. Thank you. It's in there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna end up. Erica, are you gonna wrap us up, Erica?
We're wrapping it up. So we'd love to know where you're at. I actually wonder if we not necessarily do a poll. I'm just trying to be very mindful and respectful. We invited our guests, all of you, to be here for an hour, and I do understand that we went over and we've lost a few folks, so I just want to be respectful of time. And so I actually think I'm going to bow out of the poll just to continue honoring time, but I just wanted to thank everyone for being here.
Well, good. And I think one last thing, that there's an action that you can take. I like to end with an action. New York State is not reporting for racial and ethnic data for the percentage of COVID-19 cases. There's a link and you can go, and there's a script, and you can contact Governor Cuomo and you can ask him to please do this. It really helps physicians, researchers to understand if people are not reporting the data. So please take 2 minutes out of your day tomorrow and contact Governor Cuomo and ask him to please start reporting that data. Please pass the work that Marcia and Dara are doing. We're going to put up that contact information. So this is how you can get in touch with Dara and her wellness initiative. And we'll be back next month on February 18th, right, Erica? Did you want to just give us a quick?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to address Ben. Stay tuned. I just have to go back into that group and see where they are, because we're actually doing something where we try to move at the speed of trust, and moving at the speed of trust means that you can only move as quickly as the person who's moving the most slowly. And that's not, I know that has a negative connotation, but that's not how I mean it. Yeah, perfect. And so we are slowly building ourselves and identifying that we do have similar values, and that we all hold ourselves accountable and to those values. So stay tuned. I love it so much, and it makes me feel really, really safe. And also, Ben, if you follow Good Work Institute, they did have an event that was called What's Going On the other night, Monday night, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so they, every now and then, usually every quarter, maybe every other month or so, they have a person of color gathering where folks get to just check in with one another. It's pretty amazing. I love GWI, Good Work Institute. Love them. So we'll be back next month on February 18th. It says 5 to 6 p.m. We are going to have a meeting where we were going to have to check in with one another. I wonder if maybe an hour isn't enough time based on how excited and enthusiastic everyone was. Yeah. So this next Kingston Reads will be a part of Kingston's Black History Month with a conversation about race and social classifications inspired by Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. You can pick up a discounted copy of Caste from Rough Draft, and you can also buy 2 and leave a copy for a reader. There's always the pay it forward, or buy as many copies as you would like and leave them behind so that someone who may not have the resources can actually step in and have the opportunity to pick up a book and read it themselves. So we'll send registration information out to all of tonight's participants, and the link will also be posted on our website, which is at kingstonreads.org. And we hope that you'll join us, and please spread the word. The more folks that can be in this conversation, really the better.
Perfect. And Marsha and Dara, thank you. I know Marsha had to run to teach her, co-teach an online cooking class. Karen has posted her PDF in the chat, as well as Dara's information. Thank you again to Rough Draft, Radio Kingston, and to Karen Levine, our tech wizard.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, and then last but not least, we'll put up our, there we go. So please contact us. If you have feedback about tonight, let us know. Whatever is on your mind, send us an email. We want to shape this to fit our community rather than impose something that isn't working. So.
Yeah, and I also want to uplift, we're going to be carrying this out and going on. So if anyone has a suggestion for a topic, I feel like that's also a really great thing to send in to us. We want to make sure that this conversation is relevant. And if we're having conversation with you, we should all be talking about things that we're all interested in.
All right, well, that's it. Good night, all, and thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.